everybody, it's Carolyn Bloom from Bloom Handmade Studio, checking in from my studio here in Sleepy Hollow, New York, along the Hudson River, just a little ways north of New York City and about an hour south of Rhinebeck, home of the famous Sheep and Wool Festival. I'm so happy to be back on the channel today to tell you about the magic knot, which is a wonderful technique that I have used in a few of my projects lately. Most notably the embroidered cowl that I've been working on, as well as a couple of months ago I finished a marled sweater in which I used this technique quite a bit. I know some of you may be just checking in to see only the technique, not the chitter chatter, so I'll just mention that I will include in the show notes today exactly when the technique will be shown. If you want to skip right to that, check out those notes and I'll give you the timestamp so you can fast forward. If you do want to stick around, I thought I would show you two of those projects and let you know how I've used the technique and how much I've enjoyed it, but also let you know when I would definitely recommend not using it. So without further ado, let me just pull out my cowl here. This is an embroidered cowl, a crocheted cowl that I worked on over the past couple of weeks. And I really love this cowl. In fact, I'll just try this on so you can see it. It's a reversible piece, which combines a lot of different techniques that I really like. I had a lot of muses for this piece. A little sashiko, a little knitted cable, some string art, and I used several different strands of lace weight from marinated yarns to do the embroidery on this piece. And as you can see, it is reversible. And this is where this magic knot business came in so handy for me, so that rather than having to trim my ends as I got to them, I was able to just attach the ends together and keep right on going with my embroidery. I am using 2 strands of Marion's lace weight at any given time to do the embroidery, which is something that I'll just mention when it comes to doing magic knot. It helps to have multiple strands in play at a time, because sometimes you'll get some little ends sticking up, and when you're working with more than one strand at a time, I find that that second strand will kind of encourage the ends and the little bits to lie flat. So it was quite useful to use that technique for this cowl. If you have questions about this cowl, that's exciting news for me, because I am going to be doing a podcast just on the cowl itself, and also releasing a tutorial pattern on how to do this kind of embroidery very soon. So stay tuned for more on that. But I just thought I would tell you that the magic knot was useful for doing this embroidery. And it was also incredibly useful when I was doing the marling for this sweater. And similar to the embroidery that I did on the cowl, I worked this sweater with 3 strands of yarn at any given time. And so as I shifted from one color to the next, getting lighter to darker, what I would do is drop one of the strands and attach the next color using the magic knot. And in fact, I'm gonna kind of go through here and see if I can find one of my ends to show you what that looks like when you see, I was so good at this, I can't find one of the ends. Let me just mention here that one of the best parts about this technique, especially when you're doing your marling, I find that a marled sweater looks best when it's the wrong side facing. So this is the wrong side of my straight stockinette. I just like the blending of the colors a bit better. Here, I can flip this inside out so you can see what it looked like with the right side facing. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I just found that the blending to be a little bit better on the wrong side. And so my preferred way of weaving in ends when I'm not using magic knot is to actually go up and around through my purl bumps to hide my end. But if you're going to be wearing your straight stockinette sweater inside out, wrong side facing, you don't want those ends to be visible. So as I've been talking here, I've been trying to find, here's one. Let me come close here so you can kind of see They're right there. Can you see that, guys? That's where my magic knot is. That's one of them that I did. But you really have to look long and hard to find that in a way that if I had woven two ends together into my project right here, especially under the arm, I think it would have been a little bulky and possibly disconcerting to the eye. So I really loved using magic knot to work this sweater, adding colors, dropping colors as I went along to get this kind of gradient hue. So the technique is great, once again, for doing embroidery, but also working sweaters, especially when you're holding more than one strand of yarn at a time. So without further ado, let me swivel this camera around and show you how to work the technique. Here's how I like to work the magic knot. My goal here is to attach these two balls of yarn together in such a way that I don't have any ends to weave once they've been connected. So to get started, what I'm going to do is tie a knot using my white yarn to my purple yarn, like that. I'm going to tie the same kind of knot using my purple yarn to my white yarn. Like that. Once you have your two knots worked, simply grab your yarn on the outside of those knots, on the ends closest to the balls of yarn, and give a tug, like that. And as you can see, the knots will slide toward one another, creating a bond that is remarkably impervious. And here's where the real magic comes in. You can take your snips and trim your ends really close to that knot. Like that. And even after your ends have been trimmed, you can tell that that knot is just going nowhere. And now you can work seamlessly from one color to the other and just let that knot get buried in your work, which is something that's really easy to do when you're working, especially with more than one strand at a time. So if you're marling your work, or if you want to give embroidery a try, like I have with my cowls and sweater, this is a really useful technique to have in your back pocket. I do want to mention though that I don't like this technique for working with silk. I think that silk will just come right undone. So if you've chosen a project with that kind of a material, I wouldn't advise giving magic knot a go to attach one end to the other. One thing that you could also do to check me on this, or to really master the technique, is when you're working your swatches, go ahead and put a magic knot into your work and test it. Make sure that it looks okay as you finish your piece and that it withstands blocking. To date, I've used this over and over again, and I've never had any problems with it staying intact. I hope this helps.